All right, today we're going to talk about breaking off the floor. It's a very specific part of the lift, obviously. Only takes a split second, but we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly because it sets up for the rest of the lift. One of the things that we have to remember when we're talking about weightlifting and really lifting in general, I think, is that we want to move from one position to the next position as efficiently as possible, without, as they say, leaking any power. So one of the things that we want to talk about when we're talking about breaking off the floor is where are we exerting force? The most important thing to remember for breaking off the floor is that we want to have as much of a full foot pressure into the floor as possible. So one of the things that a good way to practice it or to think about it is just to make sure, is just to do it without a barbell, without any implement at all. You're just going to go down and find your start position. So if your start position is here, I'm going to be here. And I want to make sure when I'm doing that I'm in a position where I can feel that pressure through the whole of my foot. It might even be helpful if you have big shoes on or even weightlifting shoes to take off your shoes and really make sure that you can feel that full foot pressure. So one of the things that we want to avoid, some points of performance, if we're just thinking objectively, is we don't want to be on our heels, obviously, and we don't want to be heels off the ground. Not many people would make that error, but it's something to think about. The other thing too, though, is that we don't want to be relaxed and sort of just like knees in, knock-kneed, and just kind of loosey-goosey. We want to make sure that we're in an active position with our core engaged and our quadriceps activated. So we're down in that start position here. And now what I want to think about as I break off the floor is I want to imagine I'm pushing the earth away, and you want to try to keep your back angle relatively the same. So wherever your start position is, if this is my start position, now I'm going to set my back, and that's where it's going to stay as I break off the floor. And it might change a little bit. You might open up a little bit, but for the most part, that back angle stays nice and straight. And what that means is that we're not doing this, right? This would be an example of your back angle changing if I'm doing this. And so often when you see people who are learning to lift, one of the biggest mistakes that they make is they try to stand up right away out of their set position. They get nice and set here, and then the first thing they do is they sit back and stand up. And then we get to a power position here, and I'm way behind the bar. So you see how now we've moved from the start position to the power position, but we've done so ineffectively. We've done so inefficiently because now we've lost power. If I'm in my power position here, I can't deliver as much vertical momentum into the barbell as I can if I get to my power position here. So that's one of the things that we want to think about, and that's having breaking off the floor correctly allows us to move from that set position to that power position effectively. That is to say, it allows us to move from that start position through our first pull into our power position effectively. So we get nice and set. All of our weight is through the whole of our foot, and now what I want to do is I want to push into the ground off the floor. I want to push with my whole foot into the ground. I'm digging my toes in. Some people like the cue of talon toes, like you want to try to grab the floor with your feet. And that really allows us to, or it encourages us to push rather than lean back, which is the biggest mistake people make. So that's the most important thing is to just think about pushing through your whole foot. Another aspect of this is to avoid pulling with your back or trying to lean off the floor. So if I'm down here, what I don't want to do is this, right? I don't want to try to arch my back or use my back. So I'm going to get that nice and set, and I'm just going to push. And so a very helpful drill for this is to just practice breaking off the floor. And all we're going to do is go down to that set position or mid-shin if you just have a PVC, and you're just going to move from that mid-shin position to the knee position, and mid-shin to the knee. And what you should start to feel is a really big activation in your quadriceps. If you feel an activation in your low back or your hips, your glutes, then you're probably doing it incorrectly. Also, pay attention to your feet. Are your feet flat the whole time? Do you feel your toes wiggling? You should be able to just kind of pump up and down in that mid-shin to knee position just here. just pumping up and down, not really opening up your back angle at all. So that's something to really work on, especially during this time where we can't lift a lot of heavy weights. It's a good opportunity to practice these really minute details of the lift, moving from that start position to the knee position, start to position to the knee position, and then adding in other aspects. So then moving from the knee to the hip and over your head, and then you get into the work that we practiced before with the different hang positions. But nailing down this transition from that start position is really important. Another aspect to this that's worth mentioning, and a good way to practice all of this, is to implement blocks or raising the barbell off the floor a little bit. Sometimes what happens is that people lack the mobility or the flexibility to actively engage in this low set position. And what that amounts to is that we get into like a rounded back position. So the only way to push is to flex the back, or extend the back, I should say. But we'll go over that in a future video, how to use the blocks and how to use risers to effectively practice weightlifting. So I hope you enjoyed this video, learning how to push off the floor. Remember to keep your whole foot pressed into the ground the entire time, and to use your legs and not your back. Have a nice long weekend.